Most consulting firms don't have a sales problem. They actually have a lack of systems problem. If your business relies on you being on the ball and doing everything every single month in order to generate sales, you don't really have a business. You have a job. Now, that might sound really harsh, and by no means does that mean that being a solo consultant or the business depending on you and relying on you is a bad thing. We have many clients that are earning anywhere between $300,000 and $750,000 per year as independent solo consultants. And for them, that is success. They're doing amazing. They're, creating the lifestyle they want, doing work that they thoroughly enjoy. They're making a great impact, right? On all measures, they are successful, and that's totally fine. But what I'm going to share with you is that if you're close to that $1 million level, or you're at $2, $3, $4, or even $5 million per year, and you're finding right now that your sales are not growing, it's often not a sales issue. It's more of a system, or I should say a lack of system issue. And so in this video, what I'm going to share with you is how to fix that, what to look for, right? What to pay attention to, and the steps that you can take to make sure that you are generating sales reliably in your business every single month. So we're going to go through a framework that will help you to create more predictable revenue without having to work harder, because you're not here just to work harder, right? Hopefully you're not here just to trade time for dollars. You want to create leverage. You want to, again, create success on your own terms. So let's get into it. There's something known as the founder trap. And that is essentially when you as the founder are the one that is doing all of the sales. Now, the nice thing about that is that as a founder, you're generally the best person to generate sales. The challenge is that if you're the one that sales relies on, when you stop selling or when you stop, bringing in the revenue, oftentimes because you have shifted your focus to doing delivery or playing a big role in the delivery of your business, sales starts to take a hit. And this is where having a system in place will allow you to generate significantly better results, again, more consistently. What data shows is that the firms that have repeatable systems inside of their business are able to grow 3 to 4 times faster and to see their revenues increase more significantly than those that are doing this on an ad hoc basis. So let's talk about why you should stop kind of winging it and really get a system in place. We've probably all experienced, I know I certainly have back in the day, and even still at times today, we have instances of this, if I'm being very transparent with you, but especially back in the day, right? You ride the roller coaster where at times it feels like things are going really well, and other times it feels like, well, this is a real struggle. And that roller coaster, right, in terms of your income or revenue in your business, when it's just you, it's something that you can likely manage quite well. But if you have payroll, if you have team, if you have a lot of people relying on you, it's your responsibility. This is my belief, right? I look at this as my responsibility as a leader to ensure that I'm taking care of my team and that I am putting the right systems in place so that we are able to navigate any type of downturn or challenges that may come our way. And that means that you need to move away from doing things ad hoc and piece by piece and really making sure you have systems in place. It's also important to remember that in this environment, 70% of buyers that are looking at or thinking about getting help to solve a problem, right? Thinking about engaging a consultant, they're already well down the path of kind of their journey before contacting you. Here's another way to think about it. Every month that you start from zero, or every month that you let the momentum from your marketing and sales kind of go down, it's costing you 6 months of growth. And that's because the results that you're seeing in your business today are not the result of what you did yesterday or the day before. It's what you did 60, 90, 120 days ago or more. And so if you take your foot off of the pedal when it comes to sales and marketing, right, business development, that momentum will start to dissipate, and it takes a lot more energy and momentum to get it back up to where it was. This is the other benefit of having a system, right? You don't allow your foot to come off the pedal. There's always a level of involvement or activity in your marketing and sales, okay? Now, when I say repeatable, when I say systematic, right, and consistent, I'm not talking robotic. And I'm not talking just automation and lack of human involvement or interaction or showing care and personality. It's really just about being more reliable, right? When you are running a system, that system, if it's set up the right way, creates more reliability for you. The lack of reliability, right? The lack of being able to forecast and to know what is coming down the road is what causes people to have a lot of confidence issues, to cause a lot of anxiety, worry, and fear, because you don't know what the future will bring. But that almost always is the result of not taking consistent actions, because if you were taking the right consistent actions, you would have a lot more visibility into the future, because you would have a lot more data of what works and what doesn't work. That's another kind of drawback of not having a system, is that if everything you're doing is ad hoc and piecemeal and it's not done consistently, it's very hard to collect enough data to know what is truly having an impact and what is working consistently, and to refine and build upon that. So another reason to really lean into developing your systems. So let's talk about 4 pillars that can help you to build a repeatable sales process. The first is consistent lead generation. There's many different ways to generate leads, and I won't spend time in this video going into all the different ways that you can do that, but you should be aiming to have 8 to 12 qualified conversations per month at a minimum. It might be a little bit lower than that, but generally you want to aim for around that number to have a business that is going to be, again, remember, I'm talking about a business that is doing at least 7 figures in revenue, if not multiples of that. And so 8 to 12 conversations per month at a minimum. If you're not hitting that right now, then there's something that is missing inside of what you're doing. And again, it might be the system, or it might be the elements, your approach, your strategy, your messaging, but pay attention to that. The next is your content. Right? You should have an authority content engine that is allowing you to get in front of your ideal clients every single week with content that delivers value, where you're sharing insights, where you're sharing ideas, where people are seeing you over and over again, therefore recognizing you as an authority. This is part of the pre-sales process. People will, when they actually reach out to have a conversation with you, you want them already pre-sold. You don't want to have to spend time trying to make your case about why you're so good at what you do and how you're different from, others or alternatives or competitors in the marketplace. Your content should have already done that heavy lifting for you. So when somebody reaches out, they already know you, they feel they like you, trust you to as high an extent as possible, and therefore the sales conversation will be able to move forward at a much more efficient and effective kind of rate and way. So that content done consistently is really key. The next is a structured discovery process. If you're not asking the same questions, and if you haven't defined what questions you should ask in order to qualify the buyer, to ensure that you can help them, to essentially capture the most important information that allows both you and that buyer to assess, identify, and therefore decide if proceeding makes sense for both parties. If you don't have that documented, and if you're not asking those questions consistently, not only will you likely be leaving a lot of money and opportunity on the table, you may be wasting a lot of time and energy. And it's also hard to then refine and improve your process, because if it's not consistent, right, it's hard to draw conclusions from that data or lack of data. And then the fourth, right, a clear pipeline. So you want to have stages inside of your CRM, inside of your pipeline, where you are actively tracking all the different buyers, leads, right, prospects, proposals, and I'll get into what that looks like here in just a moment in a bit more detail. But I can't really tell you the number of times, because it's happened so often, when I have conversations with 7-figure consulting business owners, or those that are doing $700,000-$800,000 per year as solo consultants, or maybe they have a couple of people or a few people on their team, and they're doing well, but they're not using their CRM consistently. They don't actually have a real system or a way of using their CRM consistently. And so what that tends to mean is that they're leaving a lot of money on the table. They're so focused on trying to attract new business that they've forgotten that they already have people inside of their database that already know who they are. And if you're not tracking that, it makes it very easy for opportunities to kind of fall through the cracks in terms of you forgetting to follow up, to check, right, to send some kind of message, to share relevant information. Remember, it's much harder to sell somebody who has no idea who you are compared to somebody who knows who you are and potentially even feels that they can trust you because they've had some interactions in the past with you. So you want to make sure that you set up your pipeline with clear stages so you can move people through those stages and start to see the overall health of your pipeline, because there's a lot of information that the data that you're in your pipeline can tell you in terms of why people are moving forward or not moving forward, and therefore being able to diagnose where to put the most attention and where you're going to see the greatest impact by fixing, right, or optimizing certain aspects of your pipeline. But if you're not managing that, and if you're not using it consistently and really capturing the data, right, and updating conversations and tracking things, it's very hard for you to grow or to benefit from the power that CRM and pipeline has. So let's talk about a few things you could do here over the next few weeks to put this into practice. The first would actually be to document what's happening right now, right? You want to identify the deals that have been won, the deals that have been lost. You want to think about why did you win those deals? Why do you lose those deals, right? Next would be to start thinking about what are the standard discovery questions that you are using. And do you have a specific, proposal template that has led to the deals that you've won? And how does that maybe compare to the sales process or questions that you asked or didn't ask, or the proposal that you used or didn't use, right, with the deals that you did not win? Okay. Then the next thing, number 3, is to set up that pipeline and make sure that you also schedule time in your calendar, or whoever is on your team that is in charge of this, that there's time, at least 30 minutes every single week, to review the pipeline. Doing that consistently is really important because every week things will change, and you want to make sure that you or your team members are aware of what's going on in the pipeline so that you can be proactive rather than reactive. If you wait to do this, monthly, quarterly, a lot of time will have passed that you could have maybe been more proactive in reaching out to somebody, reminding them, sharing something that you're doing with those people. So a weekly cadence is really important. And then finally, start thinking about, 1 or 2 methods that you can use from an outbound perspective. So how to get in front of more ideal clients, and also maybe one content initiative. So what can you do to generate more conversations, to create more awareness and authority? And that might mean setting up a campaign to land more speaking engagements for yourself. Or maybe it's about getting on more podcasts and having podcast appearances. Or maybe it's around content from on LinkedIn. But if you don't set this up as a campaign, if you don't have a plan around it, it's going to really tend to be piece by piece, right? Again, ad hoc, and that generally does not create the level of results that you ultimately want and desire. Now, the next thing here, let's talk about metrics that actually matter and that you want to track, because part of the value or the power of having a repeatable system is that you're able to actually improve it over time. Remember, I've talked a lot in this video about being able to use data and to see what's working and what isn't working, and therefore optimize or improve. So you want to be tracking several metrics and think about your pipeline in a few ways. So inside of your pipeline, right, you're going to track number of new conversations. You also would want to track things like how many discovery calls are you having, number of proposals that you've sent, your win rate or win or loss. And then you might also have another column that you're tracking everybody that has kind of moved through or fallen off at any stage of that pipeline, and now you're just nurturing them, right? So at any stage that you've decided or they've decided that it's not the right time, instead of just forgetting about them, right, move them into a nurture column. That's going to allow you to follow back up with those people and get them back into the pipeline when the time is right, by you continuing to reach out to them, provide insights, value, right? Invite them to webinars, trainings that you do, events, so on and so forth. Healthy organizations, healthy firms will win at least 30 to 50% of their qualified proposals, and 30% is low. You really want to be somewhere between 50, 60, 70% of your proposals you should be winning. Now, if you're winning a lot more than 80% of your proposals, that typically means that you're underpricing. And so you have an opportunity to increase your fees to start to win more. But if you're anywhere, lower than 50% of your current proposal win rate, there's likely something broken inside of your process. It might be who you're attracting as your ideal clients. It might be your lack of qualification in those initial discovery questions and kind of value conversation that you're having with the buyer, right? You're talking to the wrong people. A lot of factors could play into this, but this is why you want to track that data. Remember, I said your pipeline and a review of your pipeline on a weekly basis will help you to see the health of your pipeline. Now, as you build up your pipeline, you're also going to be able to assign values, right? Weighted averages to, so for example, let's say that you have 10 deals in your conversation column, so people you're having conversations with. And maybe what you have been able to see is that typically 10% of the conversations you have will turn into a winning business or winning client. And if you have 10 of them and they're $50,000 each, right, that's $500,000 in value in that conversation pipeline. But you know that 10% of those, so it's actually $50,000 of value in your pipeline right now in the conversation stage. I hope that makes sense. That's just a very simple way of laying this out. But you can start to assign values to each of the different columns in your pipeline, and that allows you to start to forecast. Now, it's not going to be very clear for you from day one if you don't have a lot of data, but the sooner that you set this up and manage it, right, the sooner that you're going to actually be able to make more informed decisions. Now, why might that be important? Because if you know that your goal is to generate, let's just call it $500,000 this month, and right now the conversation that you have on track is $50,000 in real kind of weight adjusted value, and you have, let's just say, the total throughout your pipeline is looking like it's going to be $250,000. Well, you know that you're $250,000 off. And maybe your second week of the month, you have 2 more weeks to close business. What does that tell you? It tells you not just to wait and see how things turn out. It tells you if you want to hit that $500,000 per month goal, then what do you need to do? And you can start thinking creatively with your team about, hey, like, who should we be reaching out to? Who do we need to be following up with? Should we do some kind of a campaign, an event? Right now, you can start to be creative about how to approach the current month and the current situation. But if you don't have that kind of data captured, if you're not tracking it, if there's not enough system or kind of, repetition in place, or the ability to have repetition because there's a lack of a system, it's very hard for you to achieve the level of growth consistently that you want. So all that being said, a repeatable system ultimately frees you up to focus on high value work. Over time, you might be at the beginning running many elements or parts of that system, and certainly you're going to want to be playing a key role in the early stages of setting it up. But once it's set up and once you start being able to delegate to have different people work different aspects of that system, it's going to free you up to work on high value work. It also means that if you're off on a holiday or you're taking care of someone, then your business can still go through the motions. And remember, I mentioned before, keeping your foot on the pedal, right, so that you can continue to move forward in terms of your marketing and your sales efforts, and applying that pressure. So that can always happen, regardless of what else is going on in the business. When there's a system, it's now just about running the system as opposed to thinking about what should we do, what should we do, what should we do. If there's no real plan, if there's no real strategy and there's no system, right, the first thing that typically falls off is working on growing your business, because everybody starts shifting into delivery mode. But if there's a system in place and you have the right people to operate and run that system, and you might be one of them, then it will always happen because it's baked into the plan, right? It's part of the daily/weekly calendar. All right. So again, go through, map out your current process, really think about how to make sure that you're identifying what's working, what isn't working. And then if you'd like some help with this, feel free to reach out, go to consultingsuccess.com, click on the coaching button, schedule a time to have a conversation. We're very happy to, chat with you. We love working with committed consulting business owners that want to grow in a strategic way, where they want to also have great quality of life and lifestyle. They want to make an impact on those that they serve. They want to, do work with clients that they enjoy, and they want to be financially rewarded for that. So if that's somebody that it sounds like you, right? If you're serious about growing your business and doing it in an enjoyable way, reach out, because that's the kind of person that we work with at Consulting Success. I hope that you found this video valuable, helpful to look at what you're currently doing and maybe not be doing, and find ways to implement and to improve.